Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Oliver Hayes, alongside Harrison Simeon, and we are back for episode 14 of the Scope of SportsCast. We didn't have really too much happen in the last week. Only 3 games between both the men's and women's teams. Had the football schedule released, but yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it should be a little bit of a quicker episode. I know many of you may have not made it to the end of last week's podcast, that being it was an hour and a half. So we'll get into things pretty quickly today. We'll start with the women's basketball team. Number 3 in the country heading into this past weekend, did lose against a surging Oregon State team that was number 25 before. I believe they're about number 17 now, or somewhere in the teens, mid to late teens. Because they've been really, really good lately. And we just kind of ran into a team that was hot, coming off. They had a very similar record going into the game. And they came off a loss to Stanford, but they really shut down our offense well. We had our season low in assists. It was 7 assists, and rebounds, 27. And even though we had Sarah Smith back, she's finally back from that concussion. She didn't really play a whole lot. They may have been just limiting her minutes. And there was a lot of foul trouble. Quay Miller and Vonleh had some trouble staying on the floor. And they just scored enough. They made threes at the right times. We only had three threes the whole game. I'm pretty sure there was only one after the first quarter also. Yeah, and it was just a tough game all around for our offense to click. And in general, the last stretch of games, offense has been pretty stuck in the mud. In terms of just putting up those really nice, efficient, 80-plus scoring totals we had early on in the year. In the beginning of Pac-12 play and a lot of non-conference play. So it's been tougher to do that, but they were able to split the series, moved on, found a way to win against Oregon, even though they shot an even lower percentage than against Oregon State. They shot just 34% from the field and 22% from 3. But they found a way to win because of their defensive effort, which was even better, holding Oregon without a field goal in the second quarter. I think at just 17% from the field in the first half. And even though they made a little bit of a push in the second half, wasn't enough. Aaronette Vonleh had a really nice game for her first double-double since all the way back since the second game of the season, which is kind of weird considering she's a center. But she only averages about 5 rebounds a game. Was able to get 10, though, and I had a season high in assists not assists, but steals with 4. And she's from Oregon, so it's pretty cool to see her do that. Dropped to number 6 in the country. Still, I think, we're still in second place in the Pac-12, and we have a tiebreaker over the team that's in first in Stanford. And I don't believe we play Stanford again for the rest of the year. So as long as we end up with that tie, with a tie up at the top, we'll have a Pac-12 regular season title, which I don't know since the last time that happened. Yeah,
I'm not quite sure either. Just hearing you talk, I kind of have 2 questions. And the first one, you kind of brought it up a little bit with the offense being stagnant. But they've shot under 40% in the last 2 games, and they only did that one time prior, and that was in their loss to NC State.
Yeah.
I was just kind of, from someone who's watched them the whole season, game in and game out, what have you been seeing differently from this Colorado offense, and what are other teams doing differently defensively?
So I think leading up to that Oregon game, you saw a real lack of ball movement. You saw maybe they weren't moving off ball enough. I feel like there's been a lack of making a real effort to get the shooters like Frida and Maddie Nolan involved. But in the Oregon game, you had 27 field goal makes, but 22 of them were assisted. So that's pretty promising considering how things have gone lately. So that just is telling you that the shots just aren't falling. Mm-hmm. The offense has always had some weaknesses that defenses can exploit. Matty Nolan wasn't going to be a quick fix to all of that. Quay is just all around has an inefficient stretches. Just I think 3 for 16 over the weekend against the Oregon schools, and Jalen has had a tough time really getting to her spots, I think. And but I think another thing it goes back to is the rebounding, because when you have a team that can compete in the rebounding, that makes it so much harder to get out in transition. Because even when you just get a defensive rebound, that's almost like a transition opportunity for CU because of how fast Jalen is, how fast she can push the ball down the court. And players like Vonleh, they get down there really quickly. They know what to do in those situations. So I think this year has been a much worse year rebounding wise for the Buffs, but 52 rebounds against Oregon. That's something, again, really promising. We only scored 61 on 35% from the field, but you have that rebounding back. You had 20 offensive rebounds, including 7 by Vonleh alone. And 22 assists on 27 field goal makes is always going to be something you look at and be proud of. And you only had 3 free throw makes the whole game. Yeah, I mean, just 6 attempts.
Yeah, no, that stat definitely stood out. Out of all the stats that could have stood out, I think those free throws attempts, that's kind of crazy. It's not often you see that they shoot that little. I think it's the lowest they've shot all season. But looking up through their game log, they've shot 7 free throws once, 8 free throws twice this year. So I don't know. That's just kind of a funny thing to look at.
It's been a bit of a struggle for them to get to the line.
Yeah,
I think against Oregon State they found a way. They had that kept them in the game. They had 21 makes on 23 attempts.
Yeah, and that was their second best. I'd say that's their best free throw shooting. Game of the year. The only time that they shot a higher percentage was in one of those games where they went 8 for 8 from the line. Yeah. So on that on that volume to shoot as well as they did to stay in the game is kind of outstanding. Seeing some of the games that they've had this year, struggling from the line. But then another thing that I wanted to go into, I don't want to, they got the win against Oregon, so I don't want to focus on the Oregon State loss too much, but obviously that's kind of the big news of the weekend. But I kind of want to know just what you think about this Oregon State squad in general, because you look, they were 12-0 heading into before their first loss. When they lost to USC and UCLA back to back. Both those games were pretty close. They lost to USC by 2, UCLA by 11, and their third loss came against Stanford. So Pac-12 has been a fantastic conference. Those are the 3 best teams outside of Colorado. So I was just kind of wondering, how do you think this loss kind of stacks up in Colorado's favor as far as where they're seated come March, and then just I don't know, how much of a sleeper do you think this Oregon State team really can be in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think you're right that they're right there. They have one of the top forwards in the country in Reagan Beers. She averages 19 a game. Weirdly had her lowest scoring day of the season against CU, but they have secondary options that came through for them in that game. In Talia Von Alhoffen, and then Donovan Hunter really came through for them. Shot efficiently, gets steals. They do a lot of things that we like. They share a lot of similarities with us. That they have a lot of scoring options. They play really, really hard on defense. They force a lot of turnovers, and they just really just find different ways to win. And they, right after they beat us, they completely smoked Utah on the road, or not on the road, at home. But they still smoked a really, really good Utah team that's now ranked 20th. And it's just showing how powerful this Pac-12 team is, because you have 5 teams that you could, or 6 teams rather, that you can legitimately say could be in the Elite Eight or the Final Four. That being us, Stanford, Oregon State, UCLA, Utah, and USC. They all have, either an array of stars, an array of really, really good scoring options with really good defense, like us, I would say, and then, or you have that one star like a Juju Watkins, or like a Reagan Beers, who is a really underrated name among gets overshadowed among some of the bigger stars that have stuck out in the country this season. But Pierce is one of the most efficient players in the country and just has the size and all the tools you need, averages 11 rebounds a game as well, over a steal and over a block. She does a lot of things well, and despite her not coming through against us, they have those other players that can really make impacts. And I think they just do a lot, just so many different things well. And right now they're just hot. They're blazing hot heading down this stretch. And it's going to be something we're going to have to deal with, and we have to play them at home in a few weeks. We get that rematch.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy looking at the schedule, seeing them come up in 4 games from now, knowing that, it's just that quick turnaround. We talked a little bit about these upcoming matchups versus the Washington teams a little bit before the podcast. We didn't really touch too much on Oregon, but I do want to hear, I don't know, just because the Oregon game seemed a little more insignificant, just because it was just.
But I will say I think we've turned I don't know if I make too much of it, but in terms of us being able to move the ball against anybody, that's going to count for something.
Mm-hmm.
And they have one of the best rebounders in the country in Filipina. Again, I think I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Filipina Kaye. And we hung with her. We ended up with a really concerted team effort on the glass. Off the bench, you had a lot of really good contributions from Sadler, from Sarah Rose Smith, from even Charlotte Whitaker, who I thought had arguably her best game of the year, and Kendall Wetta did a lot outside of the scoring column. Had 7 rebounds, which I think was a season high for her. And then Frida got it going down the stretch at the end to kind of put the game away when they were trying to come back. But I don't know if I make too much of it, but it's still a really good win because, you have that win on the road. You play them at home in a couple games. You kind of feel better about yourself going into that since they've only lost 1 game at home all year against the team that was number 2 in the country a week before that game.
Mm-hmm.
So now against the Washington schools, you really have to be careful, though, because Washington State is coming off of beating that UCLA team that beat us. They also, last time we faced them, were they upset us in I think the second round of the Pac-12 tournament. So they're a team that has a lot of scoring as well. They don't put up maybe the flashy numbers or anything like that as they would in the past, or as some of the other Pac-12 teams do, but they have a lot of options. Bella Murakatiti. I don't know. These names are crazy. It's cool, though. I mean, the one thing, though, is that their second leading scorer, their second leading rebounder, and their leading assister is out for the season. Charlize Legger-Walker got hurt in that UCLA game, so that's a big loss for them. And there's going to be a lot of emotion driving them in this game, coming off that big upset, losing one of their best players for the season. So this is going to be a tough matchup on the road. You are able to redeem yourselves. They play the Oregon schools and Washington schools on the road, and then the same thing later on in the season. You close out the season against Washington State. So I think this is an important game right here. And then Washington, right after that, just beat USC, who we were, right there with, and USC was one of the best teams in the country for a lot of the opening stretch of this season. The last time we played Washington, though, we dominated them.
Mm-hmm.
So they seem to be a bit improved. They're 3-5 in conference play, but 13-6 overall. I mean, they started the season, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 12-0. But they've been up until that USC win. They had lost 6 of their last 7 games. So it'll be important to get a win over that out there. And another team coming off an upset. They're going to have to play against Utah right before us, so it'll be interesting to watch how they fare against the Utes, and then they may have a 13-7 and a 3-6 conference record going to that. So in terms of our Pac-12 chances, I like where we're at right now, especially if we can get that kind of bounce back win against Oregon State, like a revenge, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, just we control our own destiny pretty much. We just need Stanford to lose one more time. And looking at Stanford's upcoming stretch of games, they play USC and UCLA this weekend. So you could definitely see them dropping one of them, and then we're right there at the top of the Pac-12 again if we're able to beat both of these Washington schools. So it'll be extremely, extremely interesting to see where that goes, because Stanford's now ranked at number 4 ahead of us, even though we did come up with the win in our only matchup of the year. Just because they've been hotter lately, they were able to take care of that Oregon State team that beat us. They dog-walked the Arizona team. We barely got by. And they've had some really good ranked wins as well against Florida State in the non-conference early in the year, against Indiana early in the year, and gutted out one against Utah. But I think this is a really big weekend in terms of our Pac-12 standing, because those would be the hardest opponents remaining on Stanford's schedule up until like the second to last game of the year when they play Oregon State on the road. We really need them to lose one of these 2 games if we're going to have a chance to win the Pac-12. Because then we play USC and UCLA again before the end of the year. And that is obviously going to be really tough on the road this time around, when both those games were so close the first time. But I think we still have a really good shot. Yeah. Really, really good shot. And I think in tournament seeding, we'll be right up there with the top 3. We were I think a 4 seed. Or no, we were a 6 when we were the number 21 team in the country going into the tournament, or 20, somewhere around there. So yeah, I think we'll be a top seed as long as we keep the pace, keep doing what we're doing. I think if Quay can get back to a little bit more consistent stretch of scoring and more efficient from the field, and same with Frida, because she was killing it for a long stretch of the year. If she can get back to, picking her spots, getting those open looks, and shooting with more confidence. Same with another player like Maddie Nolan. Maybe I think you could end up seeing Tamia Sadler in the starting spot again, or maybe even Kendall Wetta, because she's been just unbelievable. Though I think they like her as a closer off the bench rather than as a starter. But overall, really good. And I'll get to what you're at. You're gonna say.
No, yeah, I just was kind of wondering, like, this might be, kind of a hot take, but like, it really seems like these next 2 games against Washington State and Washington are going to be the most important games of the season, and I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to say when we keep reiterating, how good this Pac-12 conference is, and it's hard to say that, like, I don't know, at these 2 games, if CU takes a W, that they'll get through that rough stretch of Oregon State, Utah, USC, UCLA, with the back 3 of those being on the road. It's hard to say that they'll get through those games unscathed.
Yeah.
Never mind the rest of the schedule. But really, how much do you think that these next two games, decide the fate for this Buffs team, as far as the rest of the season, where they end up seeding, and kind of just what note they finish? Is it Is it a high note or a low note? Or?
Yeah, I think it's important for them to get out of this kind of offensive funk. They haven't scored 70 or more since all the way back against Stanford, and that was only 71. They haven't gotten to 80 since Arizona State. So to kind of get back to a more efficient offense, even if they're not scoring a ton, to just make the most of the looks they get is going to be really important. And this has been, I didn't even mention before, a crazy, crazy year of college women's hoops. There have been an insane amount of upsets. Just last weekend, 12 of the top 25 teams, including us, lost. And that included, I think at least 5 or 6 top 10 teams. So it's going to be really big for us to get by these kind of sneaky, mid-tier Pac-12 teams, but that can still get quality wins, especially against Washington State. I think that's a really, really big game on the road to really get back into an offensive groove as you head down the stretch, because you can't be going into that stretch against Oregon State, Utah, USC, UCLA. That stretch, you can't be going into it, not scoring 70. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to score 70 against one of those, or at least 2 or 3 of those teams if you're going to have a chance to win, even though we were able to get by USC without scoring 70. They got to 63. Though that 4-game stretch is so big that these tune-up games, I wouldn't even call them tune-up games because they're still really good teams, but the games leading up to them, I think it's really big for us to get back to a more efficient offense that can move the ball like we did against Oregon, but also hit the shots that they take and maybe get a little bit better from 3. Just because, you had Maddie Nolan took some more threes against Oregon, only hit 2 out of 7. So, and then Frida only hit 1 out of 6. I think just finding production from other shooters, like a Kendall Wetta, like a Quay. Because when she likes that corner 3. She can hit them.
She does.
She can really hit them when you have Jalen attack the rim, get help, and then just kick it to Quay in the corner.
Yeah, and I feel like that shot specifically, just off that kick out, a catch and shoot shot is always way better than off the dribble shot, but just being able to catch in rhythm and just with the playmaker and point guard that Jalen is, I feel like, getting those passes, getting them in that shooting pocket, and I feel like it's probably pretty hard to miss those rather than make them. So
yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I didn't mean to cut you off. If I did.
No, that was about all I had to say. I think these games are really important, but the team has proven so much already that I feel confident that we can get to that 4-game stretch and ultimately to the tourney and really make noise. Get to the maybe the Pac-12 tournament final, or even like a Final Four Elite 8. Because, they haven't looked great, but you have to remember that this team isn't predicated on the offense. They've always had a defensive identity. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to keep a USC to 59 points, if you're able to keep an Oregon that, despite having not been good, but anytime you keep a team less than 50 points in a game, and I think only 11 points in the first half, that is always going to be something promising, something to really build upon. That last year they really established that defensive identity, and when you get to that, play some of those offenses that really like to just, they don't like being disrupted. They just like to play to their game plan and get by on that alone. Once you get to the stretch of the Pac-12 tournament or the national tournament, when that happens, they really have a chance to get far. So
yeah. Well, good stuff. I don't really have too much more. I don't have much more to add to that. For women's basketball, so you're down to moving to men's?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, sweet. Since our last podcast, they only played Washington State, so just one game, not too much to to go over, but it was a pretty big one game because they were coming off a 4-game winning streak, their first road win of Pac-12 play. They've struggled on the road the whole year, so against this Washington State team who was kind of sitting as the fourth best team in the Pac-12 at the moment after kind of a weird start to conference play. It was, you're hoping that Colorado was finally getting over the brink after a pretty handily pretty handy win versus Washington, where
we talked about the Washington game, right? Last pod.
Yeah, we did because that was on the Wednesday, and then we talked the day after.
Yeah, we did the Thursday.
And so anyway, like I was saying, just that Washington game, was the Buffs, handled them pretty easily. There wasn't, of course, there's mistakes, here and there, like every other game, but it was a pretty complete win, something that you wanted to see and something that you thought was going to, probably carry over against the Washington State team that they had, being in Boulder, which, as I mentioned, is different than being on the road. But when you think back to that first game, Buffs had no Cody Williams, no Tristan Silva, and then, no shade to Banggot Dak. He's a great player. He's not he's not a big part of the rotation. So I don't think the Buffs are missing too bad in that first matchup. But not having another big guy was really crucial. And Eddie Lampkin had to play a lot of those minutes in that first game, and his foul trouble was what really hurt them. And so seeing this result and not a must-win game, but a game you really wanted to a game that would have been huge for the Buffs' confidence going forward, and kind of putting that inability to win on the road narrative to rest. They kind of messed it up, and it was weird because I want to say surprising because of all the aforementioned things of the first win and having a healthy squad and having the 4 games and getting the first win on the road, and then kind of just this happening, but against the fourth, what was pretty much the 4th best team in the Pac-12, which now has a decent case for that second spot or maybe even the 3rd spot. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place just because it was a little weird, but
it was a weird game. You had 4 players of our usual rotation shoot a combined 1 for 15? Because they had Hadley 1 for 6, Cody 0 for 4, just 6 free throws, and then Luke and Diop didn't hit a shot on 5 attempts. Though Diop just got 3 minutes of playtime, so it was really only played 7 players.
Yeah, Giselle, it was. He didn't play that much, obviously, with the 3 minutes. He really only came in when there was a little bit of foul trouble, which didn't really end up being too much of a factor in this game. As far as fouls stacking up with an individual guy, it was more fouls across the board, as you see 4 different players with 3 fouls in this game. But yeah, no, the rest of the team. Hadley, he doesn't shoot that much anyway, so it wasn't too alarming. It was more just the lack of efficiency because usually those shots are coming in transition, at the rim or off back cuts. Sometimes it works out of the post off the triple threat, and usually able to get something here and there. He was only able to get 1 basket, I think, off a back cut late in the second half. He still had his main defensive prowess, his hustle, his rebounding, as he had 7 rebounds. But yeah, then you look at Cody, and it was, it's the lowest scoring game he's had since I think the 3rd game that he played this year. First game this season with no field goals. And I feel like he was just the one that kind of epitomized the Washington State defense on Saturday afternoon, because Washington State has had a good defense all year, but it was really just their ability to slow down Colorado's driving in this game that just halted Colorado's offense. Because, they ended up shooting. Colorado ended up getting this feels oxymoronic saying getting up to 39%.
Yeah.
But they were shooting pretty abysmal in the first half. It wasn't until a late stretch that got them up to 33% in the first half. They were shooting in the late 20s. But yeah, no, Cody just struggled to drive the ball. Jump shot still coming along, even though he had that confidence, and it was really just Washington State's ability to do this to Cody as well as the rest of the team, but not give him enough space to take that 3-point shot off the dribble, especially because that's not a shot that Colorado is looking for. A lot of these guys are comfortable taking, but then making sure that the driving kick wasn't open once they had that. If they did give up the drive. And so it was just, it was this kind of weird middle ground that Colorado just couldn't get through. The ball stuck a little bit more. And even though they had some driving lanes, they'd get cut off just because, the on-ball defender was playing a little further off. So I don't know.
It seemed like just like one of those games. You had 14 assists between both teams. Really like ISO. It was a lot of ISO. Because, I'm looking at going down, just sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. It's probably good that you cut me off. I just keep yapping.
It's all good. Going on the stats, do you think some of those things that Washington State, you're saying, that did well defensively hampered KJ a little bit? Because, he was 7 for 11, but only 11 shots feels a little bit low for how this game went. You feel like you could have gone to him a little bit more, him playing 39 minutes, basically the whole game. So you think some of that was why he took so few shots, even though, he was hitting them?
Yeah, I think so because with that type of defense, that puts a lot of trust in your on-ball defenders to not give up points and not to give direct line drive takes to the rim, and so I think that's partly why KJ shot so efficiently, but I think that's the reason why I was able to get as many shots, it was just in this game specifically. Colorado had 17 fouls. Washington State had 19 fouls. Not the most amount of fouls we've seen in this game, but repetitively, as like the announcers kept mentioning it, but just seeing it, obviously. This was a really physical game, and there wasn't. I think just in general that makes it hard. KJ's worked on picking out good shots. This year he's made that a point, and that plays into his efficiency. But I think that extra bit of physicality mixed in with that defense, and also kind of seeing some of the performances like KJ has been fantastic this year. But then you think back to that Florida State game, and I don't know, I forget exactly what the number was, but he was like 4 of 20 something. It was like, wow, he pretty much shot his team out of the game, even though the Buffs didn't play well as a collective on that day. So yeah, no, I definitely would say that this defense, and their ability to limit KJ's scoring output, despite the great efficiency, did play a decent role. As KJ, 3 turnovers isn't anything like to freak out over, but it's above his season average. And they were just doing a little bit more to make KJ uncomfortable, which I think, halts the flow of the offense a little bit more too. But yeah, I don't know. One thing that was kind of interesting to me is to start the first game, KJ was able to. Miles Rice was pretty much face guarding him out the gate, and KJ and Eddie were able to line up some back cuts, some handoffs to work that off ball action to get him open. But in this game, it really seemed like there was none of that. I can't remember. I don't. Outside of a handful of baskets. I'm not sure if KJ had a back cut. I'm not sure if he had a handoff where he was able to get open in space like that. It was really just this suffocating defense of the Cougars that led them to this win.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you've seen, they've done the Buffs have done really well against sort of those defenses that aren't up to par. But when you have at least an above average defense that can really, crank up the game's physicality, you see, those old flaws that, you've seen all year start to appear. And so what do you think, looking ahead against Utah, that the Buffs can do to get that kind of win, especially against a team that's undefeated at home like the Utes?
Yeah. No, that would be kind of a fun game because out of all the teams in the Pac-12, Utah, at least record-wise, mirrors Colorado kind of the best. with what you said of the being undefeated at home, but struggling on the road. So I think that would be kind of an odd atmosphere to see. But I don't know. I think it would really just be about how uncomfortable Utah can make this Colorado squad, because you look at their losses this year. The two that stand out to me the most the games that stand out to prove the point that I'm going to bring up is that you look at this Florida State team. They're not. I need to look at their exact record this year. They're 12-8, third in the ACC, so not bad, obviously.
Yeah, they're improved. That loss doesn't look as terrible, as it did when it happened, considering how bad they were last year.
Yeah. So no, it keeps getting better. But you look at that Florida State squad, and we've kind of talked about this in prior podcasts, but that's a kind of positionless team that's very athletic and long and likes to play physical and push the ball and pressure ball handlers. You look at Arizona State; they thrived off of fast break points and their 3-point win over Colorado. Arizona, obviously, that game's kind of hard to even look at just because it's such a blowout. It's hard to even point at a specific thing. But in the Cal game, it was some transitions that got Cal back in the game. And so it's really just with this Utah squad about how much physicality and energy they can bring to this game, and being in Utah with the record that they have, I think it will be a really tough one for the Buffs. But I don't know. It's really hard because all of the signs point me to say that Colorado almost has no chance in this game. But it's just that one win against Miami where I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, you're kind of clinging to that win that doesn't even look that great anymore, considering that Miami, I don't think they're ranked anymore.
Yeah, no, they're 14-7, seventh in the ACC. They really kind of fell off after that game. And I haven't had that pretty of a start to or that pretty of a first half to ACC play.
Yeah, what do you think? So I think last thing I'll add on maybe Utah is, do you think this is a Lawson Lovering revenge game after we have been talking smack about him?
Hell no.
Since the very beginning of the semester.
I can't say the Buffs will go in there and win, but I can't say Lawson Lovering will not do much.
He's averaging 7, 4.5, and 2 on 56% shooting. So
yeah, Lawson.
He's been taking threes too. He's 28.6% as you've been taking them. I don't know, but
yeah, well, if Lawson wants to take threes, Colorado should welcome that greatly. Lawson's not a bad player. There's a reason that some people were frustrated with his departure last year. I think it was obviously accepted a lot better once you got Eddie Lampkin in the portal. But with Lawson specifically, I don't know. He's very one-dimensional in the fact that a lot of his game just comes from the fact that he's tall and big.
7'1", yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not.
He's a bench player for them. I think Brandon Carlson is going to be the focal point
for sure. Because I thought he was going to try his luck in the NBA draft last year. But yeah, he's back and doing his thing.
They're a big team. They got 3 7-footer, or not 3, but 3 players listed as centers.
Yeah, and
that are in the rotation.
Utah has kind of historically, had those 7-footers. So I don't know. Utah is one of the teams I feel like I've heard almost the least about in the Pac-12. I think that's partly due to being from Utah. Utah isn't going to be talked about nearly as much as California schools and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think this will be a really big kind of statement game for the Buffs, just because this
is probably the last chance for a really good road win. You think?
Yeah.
At least somewhat quality.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that outside of the Oregon game, that's their second to last game, just because Oregon has been as good as they have. Because after Utah, I mean, they play three worst teams in the Pac-12 on the road to finish out the year. So, I mean, in a way, those games are almost more important just because, like, all right, well, can you even handle, the small fish? But yeah, no, I think this game will be huge just because I mean, you haven't seen really that quality road win over that good of opponent outside of that one Miami win, and that still was in a neutral setting. I think it's one thing to be able to win on the road, whether that's neutral or away, but also another to, get it done in the team you're playing in the opposing team's own arena. To be able to do that with all the fans, the atmosphere, I think that's a completely different beast than just neutral. So yeah, no, I think this will be a big game as far as kind of deciding the fate of the rest of the year, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like with this team specifically, I mean, kind of college sports and Colorado teams in general. This team specifically, it's kind of just, I don't know. You get what you get, whichever day it is.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So yeah, we'll see. I think, I don't know. Just the biggest thing is just making sure that the ball is moving. Because yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could go into that. But I mean, I've kind of talked about that in prior podcasts. So if there's more to get into, I'd love to talk about that.
I really don't see anything huge because we've kind of touched on at least a little bit every single player and their strengths and their weaknesses. I have noticed Eddie's been playing a lot better. I think we maybe touched on it last week, but overall, I think we're pretty good. We can maybe move into football.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pretty much, I don't know, I guess I'll just, say one quick thing about Eddie and just the fact that it really seems that throughout this year he's just continuously gotten more and more into shape, and getting fully back from that off-season back procedure, so that's why we're seeing his jump. But yeah, no, just for this game, specifically before we get into football, I've obviously, said a million times this podcast already that this is a big game, and we'll do a lot for Colorado, but how they're going to do it, I think they need to, like I said, I think they need to pass the ball, and not just move it around, but pass it quickly. I felt like one thing that was kind of odd about that Washington State loss is that in a lot of the games, in a lot of Colorado's losses beforehand, the ball was not moving whatsoever. It was stuck. It was leading to bad shots, and if the ball was moving, it was leading to turnovers.
Yeah.
But in this last game, I mean, Colorado still turned the ball over. I mean, actually not that much. They only turned it over 9 times. But they would have multiple passes per possession. It wasn't like they were just coming down and hucking up shots. It was just how much the ball stuck before something was done. It was like there was a pass, and then a guy would catch it in a triple threat, and now he's jab stepping, looking around for the offense to move. And so by the time he drives, the whole defense is already loaded to him, and so a kick out isn't there, the drive isn't there. When the ball's moving around the horn and you're trying to find the open shooter, it's sticking just for an extra second too long for Colorado to really generate the offense that they need, especially when they're not getting the transition points that they've thrived on this year. With Washington State only having 6 turnovers in that game. So yeah, just forcing Utah into turnovers will be huge. I think it'll be tough because Utah doesn't actually turn the ball over too much in comparison to other teams. But yeah, no, it would just be, lock down the paint, obviously, with their big guys. And I think another big thing is just, if you're going to get beat from the 3-point line, like, let it be an array of guys.
Yeah.
You obviously don't want to get beat from the 3-point line. But, Andres Yakimovsky, he got hot in that first half. He didn't do much in the second half of that Washington State game, but he got loose for 3 threes after knocking down 4 threes in the first contest between the two. And it was just wow, that's a killer. And you look at some of the other games, and that where a few guys have hit 3, 4, 5 threes against this Colorado team, and on some of them it's seriously, you left that guy. He's hit the last 2 3 straight, step up. But yeah, I don't know. I'm down to move on.
It's been a little bit of a bigger week for Colorado football since the last time we talked, because we kind of talked about break and all the broad people that are coming to the school, but we got possibly the biggest addition of the offseason just in these last few days in B.J. Green, defensive end, formerly of Arizona State, did commit to Washington, but then decommitted after Kalen DeBoer left for the Alabama job. And Green was all Pac-12 second team last year. He sacked Shador, only player on the team who has done so. That's pretty funny. And he had 6 sacks, had the 6th most pressures in all Power 5 conferences, and the 3rd most quarterback hits. So, it's been a big offseason, and the D-line has looked a lot better. And I think this is probably the biggest addition yet. Could be the most productive addition yet. In Green, and the fact that he was even going to go to Washington at first, the team that was just in the national championship, says something about the caliber of guy we're about to get. Had 11.5 tackles for loss, just 1 more year of eligibility, but it should be a really big one, because I think another big story, I guess maybe not a story, but release that's happened, is our schedule officially. We knew the non-conference would be North Dakota State, which I think that'll be a tougher game than maybe some think of. Then Nebraska and Colorado State on the road. But I think we do get a pretty light conference opener. Yeah. I'm not moved much by Baylor this upcoming year. They have been really struggling these past couple of years. They had, they were in the Cotton Bowl, I think, 3-4 years ago. They had a really good year when they had Matt Rule, I remember. And then since Matt Rule left, they've just really been struggling. And it's funny that Matt Rule is now Nebraska's coach, who we will also be playing again. And then UCF on the road is going to be a really tough turnaround. It's interesting to see that we alternate home and away the whole year. Yeah, we don't really have a home stand or a road trip.
Yeah, the one road trip being back-to-back rivalry games.
One of which is in state.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Not too much really stands out from the schedule, I think.
I think the back half, the last 3 games of our schedule is going to be the toughest stretch. With Utah, Kansas is really up and coming, and then Oklahoma State was just in the Big 12 title game. So yeah, and that'll be tough.
It's kind of funny looking at the schedule because I feel like, I don't know, there's just a fair amount of teams that you're not that aren't the top of college football, obviously. Aren't really in that elite tier. You're not oh my God, we're playing Kansas. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, that. But they're
just realignment's gotten so weird.
Yeah.
When we moved to the Big 12, it seemed like a big deal. But then you remember Texas and Oklahoma left the conference for the SEC. And, all the other teams moved to the Big 10. So it's if you probably look at the college football playoff for next year, I would imagine at least 9 or 10 of the teams are going to be either Big 10 or SEC.
Yeah. No, I bet so as well. So now that whole thing is weird. But then just looking at the schedule, that doesn't mean that there aren't some sleepers on this
Arizona
on this schedule. I mean,
was really good last year, and they had a lot of turnover, but they're going to keep their quarterback, who was really good.
Yeah, and you even just look at Kansas State, who had a good year 2 years ago.
Yeah, they almost pulled off an upset over Texas last year. So
yeah,
Kansas is going to be a tough game. I think the most important stretch of the year is going to be probably that 3-game stretch right in the middle with Kansas State, Arizona, and Cincinnati to really see where we stack up, and then maybe even Texas Tech. I see that as a win. I see probably at least 6 or 7 wins on this schedule, personally.
Yeah. And I think so as well, especially with going back to BJ Green and the D lineman that Colorado have gotten in the transfer portal. I wish I could find the exact tweet that I saw, but it was something about the amount of defensive linemen in the transfer portal that Colorado's gotten. Yeah,
I think we have the 6th, 7th, and 8th best, or
the 5th, 6th, and 7th. Yeah,
that's pretty nice.
So yeah, not bad. Obviously, so yeah, no, it's just exciting to see not only the team get rounded out, but also just the transfer portal, because I mean, yeah, of course, it was going after a lineman. People, freaking out about that because obviously offensive linemen were much needed, but then the question was, well, when are you getting the dogs on defense? Now they're coming.
Yeah. I think the one position I think we still probably need some more help at is linebacker. And I was, after DJ Lundy, that whole fiasco happened, it seemed like, oh, crap, we're going to be struggling. And then we got the Wester twins, one of which is a linebacker. So we have, new players at that position who can really make an impact. And we still have Levante Bentley, who was arguably the second most impactful player in the defense, or maybe second or third behind Shiloh and Jordan Dominic. I mean, when you had those games where the secondary was pretty irrelevant, considering how much the other teams would run the ball. You have to say Travis was the best player overall in terms of talent on the defense, but when he was out and, when he came back from injury, it wasn't really the same at corner. Levante Bentley was one of our best players on defense, and he's still there. We did lose Dominic to graduation, but, still great to have him around. And, yeah.
So is it Bentley's last year of eligibility then? I thought he was a grad student last year.
I'm pretty sure.
But I don't know. Either way, we're finding that. I don't know. With that linebacker point, I'm excited to see, I don't know, just what happens. We kind of talked about this in the last podcast.
Yeah, he's a grad.
But just what happens once that defensive coordinator is finally announced. Like, could be today, could be tomorrow. It seems like when it comes to Colorado news, it's really hard to know, what is for sure, when what is being released.
Yeah, defensive coordinator
and all that stuff. But yeah, once we find out who that defensive coordinator is, it'll be interesting to see.
But I will say, the fact that we got these guys on the D-line without even them knowing who our defensive coordinator is going to be, or maybe they do, and it's just not it's not public information. People are speculating it's someone that's still in it, NFL-wise, which I don't think it is, personally, not on the Chiefs or the Niners. Maybe. That would be awesome, because those teams both have amazing defenses, really well coached. Especially teams that secondaries, I think, overperform where they're at. Like, because you can't, you have with the Chiefs, McDuffie, and then the 49ers don't really have a ton of great corners, but they're amazing defenses that are well put together. So if they are on those teams that are still left, or a team that in the NFL that just got eliminated, or like the Ravens or the Lions or anybody really, just an NFL guy that's going to really bring a new element to this defense that, Charles Kelly, love him or hate him, he didn't have that NFL experience that our new guy is going to potentially have. So I'm really excited to see who it's going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. It's just like, I just wonder when it will be. Because, I know.
By the time this podcast is out, it'll probably be released.
Yeah, I bet so.
I would imagine.
Because, I just keep thinking back to Coach Prime being on Undisputed yesterday, and saying that'll have his guy within the next 2 days. So
yeah.
So I don't know. It's I don't know. Just exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's too much more else to talk about with football.
No. I mean, Julian Lewis visited. He was the number 2 quarterback of 25.
Yeah, I remember
He'd be
that.
an awesome addition, though he is a USC commit, so that's always, finagly.
Yeah.
That was cool to see, though. And I think after
Yeah.
that, I mean, I don't know if I want to touch on hockey because Alex and Jared are going to give you all that lowdown on the podcast that'll be recorded right after this, Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can just, briefly cover it. They split their home weekend series against Oklahoma last week. Which,
those games are fun. I mean, I think I'll be at the one this Friday against Wyoming. But just because of how our show is going to be aligned, which you'll find out later.
Yeah.
Don't want to give away too much because it's going to be awesome. But yeah, I don't know what else we really can go to. I mean,
I could just
Shira James with the soccer team, Colorado Sportswoman of the Year. That's pretty nice.
Okay, that's cool.
You'll hear about a lot of that stuff on the show this week.
Yeah. I don't think there's too much else. I mean, I know for hockey that this last home stretch was pretty big because I forget exactly what the standings were, but I know Colorado and Oklahoma are both in the fight for making nationals.
Yeah,
and,
they actually jumped us in the rankings this week to 22, even though we split the series. Interestingly, we're at number 23 right now.
Gotcha. So yeah, I think Colorado stayed the same then.
Yeah, nationals are still there, and make sure to check out Alex and Jared's all the writing we have on our website about those teams.
Yeah, and Aiden Glockner too, because he's been writing the previews for all these games.
Yes, I forgot about the previews. Those are great, and we'll have more on the way.
So
and then also Nick wrote one about the ranking for Colorado women's basketball, and kind of goes into a little bit more about those upsets and stuff that has contributed to us staying as high as we did, even though we lost to maybe a team that was pretty big gap, despite them still being top 25.
Yeah. So I don't know. Seems like a good place to call it. Obviously me and Harrison would love to offer more. We always can offer more, but we also need to keep our viewers. So I don't know. I think that's it.
And I think stay tuned for next week because I'm pretty sure we're going to have a special guest.
True.
Special guests will be kept secret, and you'll find out about that later. Next few weeks, we'll definitely have some guests on the show. I want to get back to that.
Yeah, spice it up. Get back in the flow of podcasts. And we had our good winter break, celebrated the festivities, did all the things, but now it's back to work. So I think that's it. I'm Oliver Hayes.
I'm Harrison Simeon.
And as always, you heard it here first.
Go Buffs.